Cece, what do you think? What was your reaction to Tom Brady's comments?
I'm with Tom, and the reason why I'm with Tom is because I know so many players that have played with Tom. And the most prominent would have to be Randy Moss and all the stories that Randy's told me about Tom, who he is as a person, how he loves football. Tom was on the record as far as telling his wife, you know, I love football. It's my first love. I'm going to play football at least 10 more years. I'm trying to get at least another Super Bowl ring. So for me, the other players, and Tom's been through so many situations where they've cut players or traded players. Richard Seymour, Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy. I mean, they cut him before the first game. Like, he has been there. Teddy Bruschi retiring, losing Troy Brown. What about Wes Welker? Randy Moss leaving disgruntled. Like, Tom has been through all this, so the one player that they get rid of, Tom's going to stand up and start clapping, is a guy who they have the same agent who's getting an opportunity to take over his own franchise. Tom's not that kind of teammate. He's not that kind of person. And for someone to be able to write that about him, like, I know there's things that come out of New England, and I like to try to support the things that are real. But there's a lot of make-believe, too. And this part right here, I believe is make-believe based on firsthand account of talking to guys who have been Tom Brady's teammate.
All right, so a couple things quickly. One, that was on Tom Brady's weekly radio appearance. I got something wrong yesterday. I just want to correct. Yesterday, we talked about Belichick's interview that I thought was a one-off. I had the people reach out to me from WEI. He goes on with Michael Holley regularly. So I got that wrong yesterday. I want to correct that. My apologies. In regards to this one, Cece, I know there's parts of this story that you believe, parts you don't believe. I know from when we talked about it, one part that you find totally believable because you've seen this type of thing firsthand is a guy not doing what you did with Randy, which is firsthand, one-on-one, intense mentoring of someone that's going to eventually maybe take your job. Is that, am I correct on that? You
Yes.
believe that Brady was not, while he might not have been rooting against Garoppolo, that he was not working with him.
But that wasn't his job.
Okay, so that's, you mentioned that when this story first came up, and I just want to go back to it quickly. So why, you aren't the only guy to have done that, but you very famously did it with Randy, a guy drafted the same position, and if I may, with no disrespect to you, a guy that the first time you saw play knew, okay, well, this guy has special talent. This guy has #1 receiver on a team or in the league type of talent. So why did you do it?
Well, because I think it's my responsibility as a player that played the game to be able to pass on the things that Mike Quick, Anthony Carter, Steve Jordan, all these players that they taught me. Keith Jackson, the things that we learned, we would pass it on to others. And I was never worried about Randy Moss ever being better than me. I had zero concern about that.
So that's what I find so interesting, because I don't think Brady ever would worry that Garoppolo's better than him.
Not
Nope.
better,
Right.
but could replace him.
Well,
would replace him.
So why did it? I would have thought if there were certain guys that were going to have the mentality, the confidence of their standing with their team, the confidence in their abilities and of their accomplishments that you had, Brady would have been in a similar spot. Is it
No,
just
he's not in a similar spot because I needed Randy Moss to be great. Tom Brady doesn't need Garoppolo to be great. There's 3-4 wide receivers on the field at the same time. When we drafted Randy Moss, I didn't look at it, oh, this guy's going to take my spot. I felt like this is my opportunity to try to win me a Super Bowl. This guy getting ready to make my job easier. And it was my responsibility that God had put me in the locker room with a troubled kid who had faced some of the things that I had faced. I was going to help him. And that was the biggest thing. I had a responsibility to do that. And like I can tell you, I had zero concerns that he was going to be better than me. Zero. So I wasn't worried about that.
So, okay, all right. Is the biggest distinction the position because you play multiple wide receivers?
Well, the biggest distinction is the person, okay? That's what I was supposed to do with my life. I've done that my whole life, all right? Tom Brady is living true to himself, and that's the biggest difference.
Okay, all right. No, I think it's rare that we have, I don't want to say a one-to-one, but a very similar comparison that you lived. And so the story of the things you did with Moss are unique in NFL history.
Right. Tom Brady's doing the type of things I did with Randy Moss. He's doing them with other position players. He's got Gronk. He's got Edelman. He's got a group of guys, Amendola, guys that he hang with, guys he's making an impact on, guys he's helping them on and off the field. He has that, but it's not his job to be able to do, and everyone is not going to sign up to do what I did. Everyone didn't travel the path that I did. I had a lot of guys who helped me out. I felt like I was doing the same thing. Mike Quick helped me out. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler. If I would have reached my potential in Philadelphia, I would have taken his job. But he still taught me. So it was in me from the beginning in the league to be able to help the younger players.
Looking past the team and the game in front of you, there's just something that doesn't feel kosher about that.
Yeah, it's problematic. At its core, it's problematic. And when we talked about Ben Roethlisberger talking about playing Jacksonville again, to me that was a totally different situation than this is. He didn't know who he was going to play. He was talking about the difficulties that he had in the first game and his desire to want to overcome those and show, where he is and how that was an aberration.
And they didn't have a game to play.
They didn't have a game to play. But now to look past Jacksonville, which won in a fairly convincing style last time they played, and to talk about New England and then talk about winning in New England, to me, puts the focus in completely the wrong place. And I remember our first year in New England, or second year when we went to the Super Bowl, we were playing Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and Bill talked to us about the fact that it was the AFC Championship game. They were already working on their tickets and their travel for the Super Bowl. And we're all sitting in the room, and this is early in the weekend, like, they're working on their travel for the Super Bowl? And as much as you think that shouldn't motivate a group of men, it definitely gets you to the point where you're like, okay, let's see how that travel works out for you. And we ended up beating them. I just don't think you want to give anybody any more motivation than they already have to be successful.
All right, so that's the part I want to talk to you about, because what you just said is another version of bulletin board material.
Well, and really it's two, because you got the board material for Jacksonville, and then you have the board material that carries over to New England, so you get a twofer on this one.
Okay, so let's talk about that Patriots staff, your second year there. Mm-hmm. You're there, Bill Belichick's there. I don't know everyone else who's there. I know Brian Dable was a defensive assistant because we just talked about him in the break. So it's a group of really smart...
Romeo.
Okay, I thought Romeo was there. That's my guy, Romeo Crennel.
Rob Ryan.
Okay, all right.
Brad Seeley.
Okay, so it's an amazing coaching room. What you just said there was... You guys, in a game that if you win, you go to the Super Bowl, we're not operating at peak motivation. It is hard for me to believe.
No, he didn't say that.
Well, no.
He didn't say that.
Hold on. The logic must follow that if you can, based on someone's comments, get to another level of motivation, you weren't at 100%. That's just how the logic tree works on this one. So that's what I don't understand.
That's not sports logic.
Yeah, I don't know what.
That's not. I don't know what school, what class they teach that in. But that's not sports knowledge or logic. Like, it doesn't happen that way. You are prepared, but there's a thing called a fine focus. All right? Everyone is focused. But if you bring my attention, it's like a certain subject that I see on the rundown. I'm focused on the A's, B's, and C's. But in the F's, I'm getting ready to light a lightning rod under you because it's called a fine focus. And that's what happens in locker rooms.
And when you get to the point where you've got to make decisions on how much you're going to work or the things that you're going to do, and someone gives you a little bit extra to just push even further, am I saying that we weren't operating at peak motivation? No, but you're just giving me another thing.
And this is the thing, too. I think that people who aren't in the business, they don't understand. We all have the same amount of time to prepare. And this is where I used to have a huge advantage. I was going to spend predominantly my time taking care of my body, resting my body for recovery, and film study. I knew I could control that. And I knew that I could beat the opposition by utilizing that time better. Spending time on thinking about New England or on travel plans, it takes away from the thing that we have the same of.
That part I agree with.
Does that make sense, Coach?
Completely. If you're making the assumption that, okay, we're going to get through this game, it won't be a problem, and then we just got to figure out, how we're going to get our families to the Super Bowl, and
that's, to me, those are separate things, though. That part I totally agree, that for the team looking ahead, it could damage them because, like you said, there's only so many hours in the day, so many things you can focus on. That is a separate bucket than for the team that is getting overlooked, that they are then all of a sudden going to work harder. Now, you're right, I haven't...
Well, why did Michael Jordan have all these quotes in his locker?
Because I do think that NBA players in an 82-game season for a random game in February victory against the Clippers, you probably aren't at peak motivation. So you find ways to extra motivate yourself. But what Coach was talking about was the biggest game any of these guys had ever coached in, and that the Steelers' travel plans gave them a higher level of motivation.
Coach did us a favor. He took us in the meeting room where Coach Belichick was. Mm-hmm. You told him all that don't. He told you exactly what happens.
Right, Cece, and I'm trying to better understand it because to me, you're right.
I mean, he didn't just make that up.
I think that sometimes, even though it's the biggest game that we had coached in at that point, and a lot of those players had coached in or played in at that point, to add another element to it, sometimes as human beings, we don't know what our potential is. And you may be highly motivated for something, and then someone gives you another layer, and you're able to push to a place that you didn't even know you could get to. To me, that's where I think motivation comes into play. Is sometimes you don't even know what your boundaries are, and someone allows you to push through a boundary that you have. They invite you to that place. It's a great thing.
So, Coach, the fact that even something as small as a comment could motivate a group of coaches, obviously, whatever you want to call it, bulletin board material, motivation, whatever it is, it's something that works to some players. So what kind of environment do you have to have in a locker room where players aren't worried that they could say whatever they want, that a coach is going to come down them, that there was never a conversation that said, let's focus on this week and only this week? Because you know that something like that would never happen in a Patriots locker room.
Well, look, I find it hard to believe that Mike Tomlin didn't address this. And in situations, sometimes guys say what they say, even though you've gone through it, and you know what's best for the group and best in that moment. And you have some outliers where guys go off the script. And as a coach, you have to try to reel that in and refocus the group and recenter everybody. Look, when you're dealing with that volume of guys, it's hard to get everybody to do what you want them to do at the same time.
They asked Stephon Gilmore, the corner of New England, hey, what about the report between the relationship of Brady and Belichick and Kraft? He said, what report?
Because there's an edict that came down from the coach that said, do not talk about it. And guess what? They didn't talk about it. It was like a scene out of...
But nobody's talking... Not only are they not talking about it, they're not thinking about it. Like, the idea of an article affecting that group, you're so programmed to just be in the moment. Because you can't control what happened in the past, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But what you do know is what's happening right now. And if I'm the best at that...
The other thing, too, is when you disrespect the opposition, all right? You're setting yourself up in professional sports to not play up to your peak performance.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.